Hey guys, it's Mary and welcome back to Study Journey. Welcome to the second episode of the Python series. This is the second episode of the Hangman Problem. If you haven't watched the previous episode, it is in this playlist and make sure to go check that out before you watch this video. This is going to be the continuation of the first episode, and in this episode we are going to be converting the flowchart we made in the first episode into code. Without further ado, let's get on with the video. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open my CS practice, and then remember I saved everything into Hangman files. So I'm going to open Hangman files, and we're going to first open hangman.py. So this is basically what they gave us, and they just gave us the functions that we need to define and basically an overall summary of what this function does, and then you are going to write the code by yourself. So we are not going to worry about the code right now. We are going to scroll down to where it says define Hangman. And if we read this, this is basically what we're trying to do with the whole function right now. And usually I like to open a new file. So if you go to text shop, you can click it, and then we can go file and then new. So this is making a new text document, and then I'm going to save this first. So if I go here, I'm going to go to file and then save. And then here I'm going to rename it as Hangman episode 2, and then it's saved into CS practice, and I'm going to convert this into a Python file so this can be Python code. Okay, now that I have done this, I'm going to click save, and then now I'm going to basically define all of this without messing up what they gave us. So I'm just going to do this on a different doc. So like if I mess it up over here, I can always easily change it without messing up what they gave us in the first place. And I think this just keeps my stuff neater, and if I mess something up, it doesn't like ruin the whole thing. All right, so it says right here, fill in your code and then click delete. So see, these right here are 3 spaces, but I'm going to change them into a tab because my indentions are all tabs. So like 1 tab, 2 tabs. They do like 4 spaces, and you can do anything as long as it's consistent throughout the entire code. So I find the easiest way is to just do a tab instead of trying to count the number of spaces, but that's just my personal preference. Now, this is where we're going to be writing the main code what this program is using to function. So there's 2 helper codes in the beginning. It's load words and then the choose words. So remember when we downloaded the Word text file? Well, we imported this stuff. So first I'm going to copy this to the top, or this code is not going to function. So I'm putting this on top, and then to define the load words. So this is, if you read through this is basically printing out the words loaded. So like the number of words loaded. So if you looked at what we did in the first episode of the series, you saw that when I implemented this function, it said like 55,900 words. So this is the first load words part. It shows how many words are in this word text file. And then the second one is choose word. Remember in the flowchart, we said that the first step is the computer generates a word. Now, these 2 are the helper functions that this Python program gives us, and they have already written it for us. So we don't have to worry about that. Note it says like the end of helper code. Those 2 are helper codes that they gave us. Now all we had to worry about is writing like basically the main function. So right here it says the secret word is a string and the secret word to guess. So this is a word that you are trying to guess. This is the word that they give you right here. And we are not going to see it at first. It's just going to be spaces, and then you had to guess the word. So at the start of the game, let the user know how many letters the secret word contains and how many guesses he or she starts with. The user should start with 6 guesses. So if I played my game, you can see that it says to please guess a letter, and then it also shows like how many guesses you have left. So it says before each round, you should display to the user how many guesses they have left, and then the letters that the user has not guessed. So once they guess a letter, that letter is no longer in the available letters, and this is what we're going to be writing to. Ask the user to supply 1 guess per round. Remember to make sure that the user puts in a letter. So if they put in a number, it's going to say that's incorrect. And then the user should receive feedback immediately after each guess about whether their guess appears in the computer's word. So you have this word, and then they guess a letter. If it wasn't the letter, we're going to return something, and if it wasn't, then we're going to say that it is false and then move on. After each guess, you should display to the user the partially guessed word so far. I'm going to run my previous function, so remember cd is to get into the program, and then mine was called, so you have to first go to Python 3. So this was what happened first, and then here's the number of guesses left, the available letters, and it says to please guess a letter. Once you guess A, it shows you basically what has already guessed, right? So this is the code we are going to be rewriting. And notice that once I guessed A, it is no longer in the available letters for the next guess. But if I guess something that was not in the word, then it says remaining guesses is one less than the 6 above. Okay, so first we have to let the user put in a guess, right? So I'm going to say current guess is equal to input, please guess a letter. So in the beginning, you have to let the user guess a letter. And when we put something in quotations in parentheses, that means that this is something it actually prints out in the code, and it's not something that you're trying to get. So when we put this in the code input, it means we want the user to input something, but this is what it's going to say before we take in what they are inputting. And we're going to define this whole thing, and then we're going to say that that is the current guess. So we're going to let that be the current guess. Now, if the letter that is guessed, remember from the flowchart, they guess a letter if the letter is in it or the letter is not. So if the letter guessed, the two parameters are a secret word and current guess. What this means is if the current guess is in secret word. So is letter guessed, is the current guess a guess that a letter in the secret word? If it is, we had to, and then after if statement is always colon, and then we have to indent it one more time because it is going to be inside of this if loop. So if this, and then else. So basically this is saying if the current guess is a letter in the secret word, we're going to implement whatever is right here. And then if it is not, which is else, we're going to implement it right here. So first, if it is in the letter word, then we're going to print out good guess. See, notice how in the top it says input, and then this is also typed, but then if we're just trying to print something, you just say print. So if we are trying to get inputs from something or from the user, then we're going to write input, and this is also going to be typed out on the screen. But if we just want to print something and we don't need an input, then we just say print. Okay, so if it is not right, then we print, oops, that letter is not in my word. Now that we have this, we can note that the is letter guessed is a function that has not been defined yet. So if you run this program, it is not going to work because it's going to say that we have not defined is letter guessed, because that is a function that we haven't wrote yet, but we're just using it right now because we will write it later. So the next part is you have to update the letters guessed after the user guesses the word so that it contains all the letters the user has guessed. So we can do this by setting letters guessed equal to the letters that has already been guessed plus the current guess. So note that we can't just use letters guessed because we don't know what it is. So in the beginning, the letters that is guessed is none. So it is going to be an empty set or empty bracket right here. So that just basically means the letters guessed is empty right now, and then we modify it later on by saying that the letters guessed is equal to the letters guessed plus the current guess, which is the letter that you have just guessed. Now that you have done this, it is time to determine whether or not the word has been guessed. So note that the word will only be guessed if all of the letters in the secret word have been guessed. So this is basically saying if we can implement a function is word guess. Remember, this also hasn't been written yet, but we're just going to be using it right now. And then we can write it later. So is word guessed. The two parameters are secret word and then letters guessed. So what this means is if all of the letters in letters guessed is in secret word, then this is how we determine whether or not the word has been guessed. So if this is true, then we have 1. So in the beginning, we're going to set 1 to equal to false because you have not won the game yet in the beginning. But if all of the letters have been guessed, then you will win the game. And then if you win the game, you have to let the user know. So you're going to print word guessed. And then we have to break out of this loop, or it's going to keep on going even though the word has already been guessed. So once you have done, we're going to break out of the loop. But obviously, we realize that everyone can guess the word if we let them have enough guesses. So if we let them have 26 guesses and they guess every single letter of the alphabet, the word is obviously going to be guessed. So to make this more engaging and more challenging, we have to put a range. So how many guesses are there going to be? So as we can see, it says on the top that users should start with 6 guesses. So before all this, we're going to say, while the remaining guesses is greater than 0, colon, indent, we're going to print that you have 6 minus the remaining guesses left. So print you have, this is what it's going to type out. We're going to separate it with addition signs, and then you do a string of 6 minus the remaining guesses. So this is the number of remaining guesses that you have left. And then we're going to add guesses left. So this is going to say you have the number of guesses left. You close the parentheses. And then after you print out how many guesses you have left, you can show the available letters that you're going to have. Because remember, once we guess a letter, it is no longer going to be in the available letters. So we're going to print out how many available letters are there. Available letters, and then colon. And then we separate it with commas if it's not a string. So it's going to be get available letters. This is what we're going to define later. And then the parameter was letters guessed, because we are trying to get the available letters with the parameter letters guessed. The available letters is going to be all the letters that have not been guessed. So not in letters guessed. All right, so now that we have this, we're going to get the input. So I can actually put this above the while loop, because the letters guessed is going to go before the while loop, because once it is in this loop, it is starting to update the letters guessed. So in the beginning, the letter was not guessed. There were no letters guessed, so it was blank. And then once we do this, it updates the letters guessed right here to the letters guessed plus the current guess. Okay, so now that we have this, we can go down this line, and then we can see that they enter a guess. If it is right, we say good guess. If not, say it's oops, that letter is not in my word. If the word was guessed, you print word guessed. We're going to print out the word that you have guessed. With the 2 parameters. Now, what happens if we are outside of the while loop? So what if this condition is not happening? So what if the remaining guesses is not greater than 0? So it is going to be, if you didn't win it, then we are going to print you lost, or you can print out anything you want. So as we said in the beginning, the 1 is false, and then once it is guessed, then 1 becomes true, and then you print word guessed. However, if it is still not 1, which means this did not turn true right here, then we're just going to say that you lost. And this is going to align with a while loop, because while this happens, we're going to implement this. If not, then you're going to implement this. So now we have basically converted our flowchart to Python code, and then in the next episode, we are going to start with the helper functions and actually implement those into these code. So the functions such as get available letters or get guess word or is word guess is going to be true, and we can actually use them. Alright, that is going to be it for today's video. So for our next video, we are going to be looking at helper functions and writing the first helper function of this code. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.